Hello and welcome. Today I want to talk to you about India, the new China. Now, just to start off right from the very beginning, I'm not suggesting for one second that India is going to become a communist state, nor am I suggesting that we're going to walk away from China as a strong trading partner. But what I am saying is that, as we've seen with the recent economy and the virus, the COVID-19 virus, that we need to diversify our manufacturing base. And I'm talking globally, not just for Australia. Now, I'll start off with just a simple explanation in relation to economies. And economies run through basically 5 stages. So the first stage is what you would call as the hunter-gatherer stage. So there's no fixed location, and the population will roam around and move from region to region, hunting and gathering for their survival. So there's no permanency in that economy. Then we discover cropping, farming, husbandry, and we start to build up townships and rural farms where people stay put, build homes and establish villages and townships. And that's the rural economy. Then after the rural economy, you have a transitional economy. And this is a transitional economy where the governments are well established, there's taxes being paid, and the government starts to invest money into roads and infrastructure and services that become necessary for the cities to grow larger. And then once we've gone through that process, we become a manufacturing economy. And then you have large-scale movement from the farms into the cities. The cities build up the factories manufacturing. There's a general prosperity, and people's overall position improves, and we then become large consumers. And then the final stage at this point in time is that we move on to what's known as a service economy. Now, Australia now is a service economy. 62%, I think it is. I'll just have a look on my notes here. 63% of our economy is a service economy, whereas only 6% of our economy is manufacturing. Now, a lot of people at the moment are saying, well, we should make more here in Australia, and it's a fair enough argument. However, the problem is that when you compare us to other countries, where we have a problem, and the 3 necessities or the 3 factors that are required for enterprise is you have to have land, you have to have labour, have to have capital, and you have to have entrepreneurship. So unfortunately in this country, in Australia, we've transitioned through the rural economy. We're now into the through the manufacturing economy and now into the service economy. That's because our land content is expensive, our labour is expensive. Raising capital at the moment is not quite as expensive, but nevertheless still a cost to it. And we certainly don't have any shortage of entrepreneurship. But given the cost of land and labour, it doesn't lend well to other countries such as China and India and the Philippines, etc., where their labour and land costs are a lot less than they are in Australia. And so, to give you a comparison, the average Australian monthly income is $7,189 per month. Now, in China, it has increased a lot, but is now $1,513 per calendar month. Now, if you want to compare that to a country such as India, the average income in India is $210 per month. Now, these are all Australian dollars. So as you can see, you're talking $7,500 to $1,500 to $210 per month average income in each one of those regions. So although sentimentally we would love to manufacture in this country, in Australia, realistically we can't. Well, not if we're going to be competitive against countries such as China and Vietnam and Indonesia and India and those areas. And so that's why these developing countries always become the manufacturing hub. Now, with the case of China, back in 1979, China opened up its markets to the world. Now, from 1979 to roughly 2000, the Chinese economy, although it improved significantly, it was a transitional time. And that was a time where investors cautiously invested in China, brought capital into China. The government spent a lot of money on infrastructure, and they went about to deliberately turn their economy from a rural economy through the transitional economy into a manufacturing economy. Now, being a communist government, they had the advantage that they just did it. There was no consultation, and we as consumers allowed that as well. And I'm saying globally as consumers. So they didn't have to worry about environmental issues. They didn't have to worry about labour exploitation issues. So they had a lot of advantages because they are a communist government to be able to do that. And of course, in the 70s, 80s and 90s, environmental factors weren't as prominent as they are today. So when they hit about 2000, then the Chinese economy, or the Chinese manufacturing economy, absolutely expanded exponentially. It just went crazy. And we as Western consumers were more than happy to take advantage of that and to buy the products coming out of China. We were all in a very high consumer market, ourselves, United States, Europe, those economies, and therefore we were able to buy these commodities from China at very good prices, even factoring in the cost of transport, which is a large cost for any products that are brought in from overseas. Now, China is heavily reliant on importation of raw materials and foodstuffs as well. So they have a population of about 1.44 billion people. So they're the second largest economy in the world, largest being, of course, the United States. But that's tipped to change over the next few decades. So China is very much interested in maintaining those supply lines. And to do that, they have a program they call the Belt and Road Initiative. And it's the modern version of the old Silk Road, where they are investing heavily into other countries in order to secure their supply lines. Now, Australia is no different to that. We need to keep trading with China. We need to keep exporting to China, and we need to keep investing in China and obviously buying products from China. That is very crucial for our economy to do that. Having said that, we rely heavily on things like coal export and natural gas export and those types of fossil fuel type exports. But those over the next 20 to 30 years will, to all intents and purposes, disappear. Now that's because we'll run out of those natural resources, because we won't. It will be the shift in these developing areas such as China and India and these other areas to shift away from fossil fuels to more reliable renewables. And the reason for that is very simple. Energy is their number one priority. And without energy, they can't feed their population. They can't have the manufacturing they have currently with the Chinese economy. So therefore, it's very, very important that they keep their energy needs up. The beauty of renewable energies, and that can be nuclear, could be hydro, could be solar, could be wind, any number of different technologies. The reason for that is that they can produce those energy producing resources within their own country. And so therefore the reliance on other country for their future security is much diminished. And personally, I can't wait for us to transition to renewables, because I think it's a safer option in terms of world peace, more so over environmental issues. Environmental issues will take many hundreds of years to resolve, but the non-reliance on foreign governments for our energy requirements is a very, very high priority, and a much higher priority than the immediate, or sorry, the much longer term environmental benefit that will come from that as a result of that transition. But that's another video, that one. So far from saying, you know, we've got to isolate ourselves from China and China's the bad guys, and I know there's a lot of people out there who are very worried about China, but I personally am not. I feel that this Belt and Road Initiative that the Chinese government is undertaking is really a mechanism for them to invest in other countries to ensure that they have their supply chain intact so they can get their raw materials that they need. And yes, they are investing in Australia to a degree, but they are investing in other countries to a much larger degree. Now, the downside of that is that eventually, if our export products become too costly, then that gives China the ability to bypass Australia and go to other economies as their Belt and Road Initiative develops and they provide more services in these developing countries, which is, of course, the intent. And that's fair enough. When you've got 1.44 billion people to feed and employ, you have to have some sort of mechanism in place to ensure that you have solid, strong supplies. So we don't have to worry about China owning essential or crucial parts of Australia, because if that comes to that point, if it comes to that point, under Section 51, subsection 31, we can quite legitimately reclaim any property of Australia. Now, property is just not restricted to real estate. It can be intellectual property, it could be shares in the stock market. The term of property has been defined by the High Court as to incorporate other things other than physical real estate property. So although you may be concerned or have concerns about China and their investment in this country and investment in farms and rural properties, it is just all part of their Belt and Road Initiative to ensure a supply chain to their population. And if it comes contrary to our national best interests, we do have the power to take it back. So to me personally, it's not a great issue. I mean, yes, we have to be cautious about it and not go, just to open our borders to unregulated investment, but it doesn't need to be a point where people need to be overly concerned about it. So I think it's important to acknowledge that China is and will remain a very important trading partner with Australia, and we shouldn't be going out of our way to jeopardise that relationship, because, as I said before, 26% of our international trade is with China. So to put the demand in perspective, and I suppose this is just a way of demonstrating the size of the Chinese economy. If you attended a community meeting, for argument's sake, let's say 100 people turned up to that community meeting. If that community meeting was held in China, instead of there being 100 people at that community meeting, there'd be 5,650, give or take. And that's the scale of their population in relation to Australia. So for every 100 Australians that would attend that community meeting, there would be 5,650 Chinese that would attend the same meeting, assuming that they were allowed to have that meeting in China. So that's to give you an indication of the scale of the Chinese market. Is just enormous, and that's why it's important to keep trading with it. And China's not going to go away. I mean, it's not going to disappear. They've got such a large economy, such a large population, and if we're active in that population, that's going to create prosperity for us as a nation as well. So why India? Well, India's population at the moment is about 1.385 billion people. Now, as I said before, China's population is about 1.44 billion. So India's population has exploded and is not that far behind the Chinese population. But in terms of income, average income, as I said before, the average income for the Chinese person is around about $1,516 per calendar month. But for the Indians, it's about $210 per calendar month. So as the Indian economy is very much a rural economy. Now, there is a lot of service industry in China, but there's not enough services there to keep the population employed and to bring them out of poverty. And so therefore, India becomes a logical choice. It also has good shipping routes up through the Suez Canal into Europe, and of course across, it does share a border with China, and across down into Australia and Southeast Asia. So it is strategically placed in terms of shipping routes and the population required. So the three factors, as I said before, for creating employment or creating opportunities is, of course, land, labour, capital and entrepreneurship. Now, there's plenty of entrepreneurship in India. The capital costs, well, you can provide capital, and that's where I'd encourage Australian businesses to look at India and invest in India with their capital to create factories to manufacture. They've got a cheap labour force there, and you know, given time, it I believe will become the next global manufacturing hub after China. Now, there are of course issues when investing in other countries, and you've got to look at political stability, economic stability, and those sorts of issues. Well, you know, if we do some comparisons between China and India, for argument's sake, the corruption perception index for China is 80 out of 198, and the corruption perception indicator for India is exactly the same. It's 80 out of 198. Now, interestingly, Australia's corruption perception index is 12 out of 198, and if you're interested, New Zealand is number one. They are apparently the least corrupt country in the world at number one out of 198. So that's just what's called the corruption perception index, or the CPI. So in terms of corruption, it's the same as China. So it's no different to China to deal with India than it is to China. So the advantage in India is a few advantages to trading with India and creating, investing in the Indian economy for manufacturing, is that on the 25th of September 2014, the Indian government made an announcement or created a program called the Make in India program. Now, the Make in India program was specifically designed to create manufacturing jobs in India with the export market in view, and there's lots of incentives to do that. Now, there's been criticism about this Make in India program. There's been a lot of people saying that it's been a failure. But you have to remember that it took from 1979 to the year 2000 for China to really hit its straps. And that's a 21-year period. So what's happened over that 21 years or 41 years now is that China has developed very, very competent manufacturing skills, and they understand the process to set up large manufacturing industries to provide the world with the products that they need, to import those raw materials so as they can have the supply chain to manufacture and export. Now, India is only in the early stages. We're talking 6 years down the track, and it could well take India 20 years to develop what it needs to in terms of infrastructure and the experience and skills to get itself to a position where it can start to take advantage of a strong manufacturing base and increased employment of the local people to bring that country back up into prosperity. Now, of course, the good thing about India is that it's a democracy, much like Australia. It has a large base of English-speaking people, because it obviously was in the past a British colony. to bring the skills of the local Indian people up to a level where they are employable in the manufacturing industry. So the benefits of looking at India as a future manufacturing hub for the world economy are quite substantially. First, you have a government that is proactive in ensuring that it's doing everything it can to create an environment where it's going to attract foreign investment, so people will come and invest in the country to bring with them the capital and the skills to upskill their population. You have a rural population of about 65% of the Indian population. Only about 35% of the Indian population lives in cities. So you have a vast employment pool of people that can be trained up to work in the factories and bring their level of prosperity up. And of course, as a result of that, they'll become consumers themselves as the middle class expands. So this is also about expanding our basket. So in other words, instead of having all our eggs in one basket, as in with China, we can expand on that and put spread the risk. As we've seen with our recent pandemic, it's not good for the world economy and for the world supply chains to have all your eggs into one basket. Yes, I know at the moment the Indian people are suffering dreadfully from the recent pandemic, but like all of us, they will struggle through it, and hopefully with the vaccine coming through early next year, they'll be able to vaccinate their population and we can rid ourselves of this insidious virus and get on with recovery. India is a logical choice. It's an area that I would encourage manufacturers or people who wanted to manufacture goods to look into. It's not going to happen in the next year or two. It's probably going to be a transitional period of maybe 15 or 20 years. They have a lot of work to do, but at least it's a stable democratic government and reasonable levels of corruption in that country as well. So what happens after India? Well, I would say that the next region that will become the new manufacturing region will probably be Africa, but I don't see that until at least after 2050, 2075 for Africa to become united in such a way as they can turn into a manufacturing hub. So we don't want to ignore China. We don't want to stop dealing with China. China is incredibly important to us economically, but we can look at diversifying our manufacturing base globally, and that's just not Australia. This is, of course, across the US, Europe, all around the world. A bit of diversification, a bit of competition will be good for the Chinese government, be good for the world economy, and it'll be good for distribution of natural resources as well. And of course, for the Indian people, it'll bring a lot of them out of poverty. And when people come out of poverty, that has a positive impact on awareness of environmental issues as well. So that's a good factor as well. I'm sorry the video went a fair bit longer than what I anticipated. All the information that I've quoted to you, I have put on a fact sheet, and I will leave a link to the fact sheet underneath the video here. If you like what you see, please like, subscribe, log onto our website, have a look at our policies. There's 36 odd different policies on our website. We're certainly not a one policy party. We're very much a diverse party in terms of resolving problems and coming up with solutions. So thank you for your time, and I'll see you at the next one. Thank you.